We hear a lot about how the US should stand up and support Ukraine because it's democracy versus autocracy. Inconvenient, though, for the Biden administration and the media is that Ukraine, not that long ago, was openly acknowledged as one of the most corrupt countries on earth and that its democratic foundations were, shall we say, less than sound. This doesn't mean that they deserve to get invaded, but it does mean it's not the Disney story that they want to tell you when justifying shipping them hundreds of billions of dollars in weapons. Now, Ukraine, since the war began, has undertaken many undemocratic actions. They've banned opposition parties, they've canceled elections, they've declared martial law, they've kidnapped people to put them into the draft, so much more. All of those are important, but to a certain extent, none are as bad as what we're about to discuss. For us, the detention of an American citizen who has now died in their custody after maltreatment. This is a complicated story because the figure behind it is complicated himself. Gonzalo Lira was a Chilean-American citizen. He was living in Kharkiv, Ukraine when the war broke out. He previously had an established presence online, but quickly became critical of the Ukrainian government, as was his right to do so. His status as a US citizen complicated things for Ukraine, who long before would have thrown him in jail if they could have. Eventually, after years now of speaking against Ukraine, they cracked down in May of 2023 and decided to arrest Lira, who posted a public message before his detention. The indictment of Lira inside Ukraine explicitly states in English that he was being prosecuted, quote, for production, distribution of materials containing justification, recognition as legitimate, denial of the armed aggression of the Russian Federation against Ukraine. Read his indictment, it becomes clear. Lira in no way materially helped the Russian invasion. All he did was say that it was justified on social media. You could think about whatever you want about what he said. What I care about is his US passport, because it says United States of America. Then who does this Kiev regime think that they are, detaining and throwing in jail a US citizen after they've been bankrolled by our government? Lira had one final message that he actually was able to post from a border checkpoint before his final arrest. Take a listen to what he said and how grim it was.
Because I had an opinion that went against the narrative. And that's why I went to prison. And that's why, if I'm arrested again, I will die in prison. So I ask you, please, as many people as possible, the American State Department knows exactly who I am and the situation I'm currently involved in. And they know the fate that awaits me. You know, they have that saying that, I forget the wording exactly. You know, I'm a little stressed out, as you can imagine. But they have that saying that people are fundamentally good, but for evil to triumph, all you need is the indifference of good people. Please don't be indifferent to my fate. I ask you this very humbly. Please recognize that, well, the literal death that awaits me if this doesn't work out. Understand what's going on.
I'm sad to say, he was right. His family notified journalists yesterday Gonzalo Lira died in Ukrainian custody 6 months after being detained, after he posted that video. The United States government did zero to get him out, despite bankrolling the entire regime, and the fact that we could order Zelensky to do whatever we want. It was an explicit choice to allow Lira to rot and die in Ukrainian custody. The State Department confirmed Lira's death to journalists, saying that they, quote, offer our sincerest condolences to the family on their loss. That was it. That's all he got, despite his supposed right for his government to do anything in their power to fight tooth and nail for any citizen wrongly put in captivity in a foreign prison. Lira, with his work, was committing acts of journalism. Let's contrast the silence on the case, for example, to the Russian detention of Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich. The State Department, the White House, they have rightly protested Evan's unjust detention and frequently raised this in bilateral relations with Putin. Again, Evan is wrongly detained. I do want him out as soon as possible. And in his case, we are at least certain the White House is actually doing everything in their power to get him out. But in the case of Lira, they let him rot. They did not issue one statement of protest. In my research, I could not even find an instance of the Biden White House saying his name. The reason is simple. He committed wrongthink. He thought the Russian invasion was justified. Okay, so what? His thoughts on a foreign conflict that doesn't affect us is enough for the government to condemn him to death in Ukraine? Consider the insanity of that. Consider also the silence of the media. Even when they cover his death, it's like this. Newsweek. Who is Gonzalo Lira, pro-Putin American expat, dies in Ukrainian jail? Or Yahoo. Pro-Russian blogger Gonzalo Lira allegedly dies in Ukrainian detention center. Allegedly, the State Department confirmed it. In both cases, you see his crime, pro-Putin. Again, I reiterate, who cares? So what? Being pro a dictator of another country is your right in this country. Sure, he was on Ukrainian soil, but do we really doubt for a single second that the outcome would not be different if there was, say, a pro-Ukrainian blogger detained in Moscow? We don't have to doubt because we see the disparate treatment of a Wall Street Journal reporter versus Lira. Lira's death in Ukrainian custody is a genuine scandal, and more so, it is a scandal to erode the power of the U.S. passport. I've been to some sketchy countries in my day, the types of places where you gotta bribe cops to be left alone. Belying the individual circumstance, I never actually worried that much because I just figured, hey, U.S. citizen, what are they really gonna do? Now, I'm not so sure. If you say the wrong thing, the government will let another government kill you. That is the reality of being American today if you think the wrong thoughts. I mean, Krystal, it's totally nuts.
Hey guys, obviously I had a lot of thoughts on what Saagar had to say there. So if you want to see my thoughts on this monologue and every other Saagar monologue, make sure you subscribe at breakingpoints.com.